morning, everyone. Good morning. So glad to see you all here this morning. You made it through the storm last night. Glad you're here. Those of you online, welcome as well. We really appreciate any time people take the time and energy to show up and help our worship experience and our church experience be a richer, fuller experience for all of us. So thank you for being here. Let's get started by singing together now that you're nice and comfortable. If you feel comfortable to stand or rise, we would love for you to do that, and we'll lift our voices together. From a God who loves seat. And I'm sorry I'm out of practice from being inside. I forgot to mention if you need lyrics, we have those printed out, or you can get them on thegrove.today via your phone's browser, which you'll need to sign into anyways, probably.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Hey, good to see all of you who braved the weather in order to come out and come in this morning. Good morning, everybody watching online. I know several of you are watching either from the warmth and dryness of your homes or from wherever you're gallivanting in the last couple weeks of summer. My name is Jeremy. I'm the pastor here of the Grove Cottage Grove, and we're a brand new church that seeks to grow goodness. So we hope that every interaction that you have with us, whether it's outdoors in the Grove or it's indoors or it's online, is nurturing healing, wholeness, and beauty in your life. I'm going to turn your attention to a couple things this morning. First of all, when you came in this morning, you should have received one of these, the worship handouts. If you don't have this in hand, much of the information that's on here is also on that same webpage, thegrove.today. So if you have that webpage pulled open, you can look there as well. First of all, we have the worship insert. So this is an opportunity, one, for you to let us know that you are here, or to request any information about anything related to the Grove on the backhand side. So in a few minutes, we're going to collect offering, and if nothing else, this is an opportunity for you to put something in that offering basket when it comes around, so you don't have to do that awkward dance of, oh, I don't have money to put in, but I feel awkward not having anything to put in. You can fill this out. There should be pens in front of you, in the pews right in front of you, for you to be able to fill that out. Today's date, in case you're wondering, that's the first thing that's on the top, is August, which is 8. So 8/28. 8/28 is today's date. Also on the inside, there's some more information, just general information about the Grove, why we exist, what we do with kids, and about giving, both in person and online via either our website or via Venmo. Then, you know what, I'm going to skip announcements a little bit. We're going to go straight to the kids. As you can tell, we are in the midst of summer. Usually we have been out in the Grove where the kids are just able to explore the Grove. We are indoors today, so you're able to hear some of the kids in the space. Even if you're watching online, you might be able to hear some of the kids in this space. It's fantastic. We love having kids in worship. We have this space on the side for them to be able to move their bodies a little bit and to be able to do some activities. We have coloring sheets in the pews right in front of you. And then a little bit into the service, what we're going to do is we'll have Miss Chelsea. Chelsea, you want to raise your hand? We'll have Miss Chelsea take the kids out to be able to do activities out there. Are we going to sing them out today? Okay, yes, we'll sing them out after our connection point. And then we're restarting the full kids programs in 2 weeks. So not next Sunday, but the following Sunday, September 11th. We'll do a fall kickoff. You'll hear much more about that in the next 2 weeks. But that's kids. Now, I will either turn your attention to the back of this or to those 3 images on the webpage, thegrove.today, which are the 3 most important things to know for this month. So as we move towards fall, we have been re-emphasizing the things we're trying to do in order to welcome the people arriving next. We've been connecting with so many new people, and that's fantastic. And what we need to do is continue to focus on who's not here yet, and what are the things that we can be doing as we walk in these doors to turn around and envision the people who might walk in behind us and what we might do in order to welcome them well. So first of all, one of the big emphases this month has been a month of work, right? So 2 weeks ago, we did the stage assembly. This past week, we did lots of groundskeeping. We owe huge thank yous. So first, I'm going to give thank yous to the people who led those projects, and then thank yous to all of the people who contributed their time and energy and sweat and blood maybe to making those projects happen. So first of all, 2 weeks ago, we had our stage assembly led by Trevor and Zach. Let's give Trevor and Zach a hand. And then if you're in the room with us and you helped at all with the stage building or grounds around the stage over the course of that week, please stand, and we're going to cheer for you as well. Awesome. Then this week, we had property improvement. We're not out in the beautiful grove today, but hopefully you were able to see some of it as we were coming in. And I'd encourage you after the service to go explore the grove because, oh my goodness, the difference that has been made out there. That project was led by these two, the O'Neills, who just happened to be Katie's parents. So we've got Pam and Marty. Thank you. And everybody who helped contribute over the course of the week to the, yeah, I know, I'm going to make you stand. Maybe? Okay. Thank you. Huge deal. Not only being able to welcome the people arriving next to the church, but also all of the ways that we hope to bless the community through this building and these grounds. Huge deal. So the next project that we hope to take on in the next couple weeks is to finally put together that playground. So if you are interested in contributing to that work, looking at all the pieces and trying to fit them together to go into that playground, our ultimate goal is to have it up by September 11th. Now, some of you might be saying, oh, that'll be no problem. That's a couple weeks from now. It's going to be a project. If you're interested in contributing to that project, again, you can either check on the back of your worship insert, volunteer opportunities, and I will follow up with you, or you can go to the ttsu.me/cghelp in order to sign up. If you're on that web page, you can just click on the link. I will tell you, do not scan the QR code. The QR code does not bring you where you need to go. So there's other ways for you to be able to indicate that you're interested in that. Okay, that's announcement number one. Number two is get involved. We would love for every single person to be able to find a volunteer opportunity where you can use your gift and passions, one, so that you can just use them for your own betterment, but also to be able to welcome the people arriving next. We'd love to be able to get more and more people into those positions before fall, before our launch, our big kickoff on September 11th. And two specific things we are really looking for and really recognizing the need for. Number one is nursery volunteers. We'd love to get a regular, recurring, like once a month, once every 6 weeks, someone who's willing to volunteer in the nursery. We've got lots of kids and lots of younger kids, and we'd love to be able to provide that regularly. And then hospitality. If you can be a friendly face, if you can show up early and make coffee, if you can hand out the worship handouts, if you can just say hi to people as they walk in to make sure they're feeling welcomed. Those are two things, and in addition to all of the other opportunities that if you're interested, we definitely need some help with those areas. So if you are interested in those or anything else, you can scan the QR code, click the image online, or you can go to that web address. Last thing is about becoming a partner. This is the next and final formal step for you to be able to say, you know what, this is my church family, and I want to acknowledge that by committing to gather regularly, to give something regularly, and to grow by connecting with one of those volunteer opportunities and a Grove group. If you want to know more or actually want to take that step in filling out the form, again, click on the image, scan the QR code, or go to that link. Okay, I think that's everything. So with that, we are now going to do connection points. Connection point is the opportunity. Yes, it's an opportunity for you to be able to stand up and connect with somebody next to you, introduce yourself, and to be able to discuss a question. Sometimes it might be a little bit awkward, but we give you the prompt, and building relationships with people is incredibly important when we are all new at this. So today's question is going to be about rainy days. What is one of your favorite activities to do on a rainy summer day? So maybe it's taking a nap, maybe it's going out and jumping in the puddles, maybe it's sitting by a fire and drinking warm coffee. What is one of your favorite activities to do on a rainy day? So with that, I'll have you stand up, find somebody next to you that you don't know or don't know very well, introduce yourself, and discuss that question.
Okay, you can come back when you're ready. People online, you can put in the chat too what you like to do on a rainy day. Watch church from home, maybe. Okay. Everybody's making their plans for the afternoon. Who's got plans for a nap this afternoon? Yes. Just me? That's fine. Oh, that's fun. Okay. So, if you have been in worship with us for a while, something we do when we're indoors is we like to give the kids space to go be kids, and we have our space to be grown-ups. This is in no way us trying to kick the kids out. If you would like to keep your kids in here, they are more than welcome. But Chelsea is going to take them out into the commons area so they can be wiggly and loud for a little bit. And I think they'll come back in with us at the end, yeah? Will they come back in with us for the last song? Maybe. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So our tradition is that we sing them a little song, and then we send them off on their way out. We sing Jesus Loves the Little Children. So sing along if you know it. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Every color, shape and type, they are precious in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. Nice. All right. Well, as you all know, we've been in a series called All the Feels, in which we are addressing all of the big, heavy things we have been feeling as a result of the world's events and our local events that have been going on for the last few years, which is a lot. And today, we wanted to address a harder one, rage and anger. Which, rage and anger is an interesting topic to plan music around. So that was a fun job. Not a lot of contemporary Christian music songs are easily marketed if they are filled with rage. So that's not really a thing. So it was an extra challenge for me today. But we'll get to that in a minute. I wanted to share a brief real-life story, an example of something that came up just a couple days ago in our home that I thought, oh, this illustrates this so well. So we hosted our son's first ever slumber party. He's 7. And the 3 boys that came, it was their first time too. It actually went pretty well. All things considered, it was like equal parts chaos and sweetness. But there was one particular moment where there was a fight that broke out. I mean, it was like, 11:30 at night or something. So they were tired and it had been really intense. And I don't know why exactly this fight happened, but I just know what happened. And one boy said some really mean things to the other boys. So, of course, I went in there just to, see if they were okay and to see if they could use some help sort of, working it out together. And when I walked into the room, I found multiple boys in tears. Some of the boys in tears were the ones who had received the angry words. And one of the boys in tears was the one who said the angry words. And immediately, I just, my heart broke because I knew, this kid said some things he didn't mean, and he somehow maybe got hurt and got upset and said mean things, and he was really embarrassed and ashamed of what he did. And so I kind of helped them work it out and just help them understand, sometimes when we're really tired or when something makes us upset, we say things we don't mean, and it can be hurtful, and that's normal. And this poor boy who was so embarrassed, all I could think of the whole time was dude, I can relate. I don't know about y'all, but all of the events over the last few years have made me into a person who is much more quick to anger and usually saying mean or angry things to the people I love the most. And then I immediately, like, once I spit that out, then the next thing I feel is shame and embarrassment because I didn't mean to do that. But I was thinking about it, like, we've all probably experienced that at least in a little bit over the last few years, and it's a natural human reaction, right? Like, when we are threatened, when we feel unsafe, when someone does something to hurt us, anger is a very natural first reaction. It's a defense. That is, underneath that is like pain or fear, right? It's kind of like you push a cat into a corner and try to pick the cat up. The cat's not going to want to snuggle. The cat's going to lash out, and we are like that too. And so we worked it out, happy ending, the boys reconciled, and even the boys, the most beautiful thing to me was the boys that had tears in their eyes, who'd feeling they had been the recipients of the angry words, with tears in their eyes. They still said really affirming words to their friend who hurt them and said, like, we still like you, we want you here, it's okay, we make mistakes. And they were able to reconcile through their tears. And so this reminded me of two main things when we're dealing with this rage and anger stuff. The first is that it's natural and to, lash out in certain ways or to be lashed out at. And in those moments, we can pause and take a deep breath and just have compassion for ourselves and recognize that that pain is coming from somewhere deep, that we're not angry people. Like, this little boy was not a bad person. He's really sweet. He just had a bad moment, We can have compassion for ourselves in those moments, and we can have compassion for each other and realize that when people take their pain out on us, that it maybe has nothing to do with us. And people are just hurting. The second thing I realized is that the first step in kind of flushing out these feelings is like rage and anger is often a first thing that comes out, but the thing that must come next is reconciliation and seeking to create peace in those moments. So back to music. Again, there's not a ton of modern music, Christian music anyways, that focuses on rage and anger, but there's a lot of that in Scripture where people are just freely crying out and being like, God, why is this happening? What do we do with this? People just crying out. That is a beautiful form of worship that is not often addressed. And so I picked one of our favorite songs as of late that is one of those songs that maybe isn't angry, maybe for you, you're just feeling more sadness or whatever, but it's a crying out song. So that's the first thing we're going to do is sing together and collectively be like, God, this has been a hard few years. God, help. And then we'll pray together and focus more towards reconciliation and making peace. Okay? So if you will, stand or rise with us. We'll sing this song called Illuminate the Shadows.
Illuminate the shadows, comfort those who are cast down. Illuminate the shadows, be a refuge in the time of storm. Oh God, our help in the time of trouble. Oh God, our help in the time of trouble.
Oh God, our help in the time of trouble.
Oh God, our help in the time of trouble.
Oh God, our help in the time of trouble.
Oh God, our help in the time of trouble. Illuminate the shadow, cast the evil ruler from his throne. Illuminate the shadow, break oppression with your mighty arm. Oh God, our help in the time of trouble. Oh God, our help in the time of trouble. of trouble. Illuminate the shadows till every idol has been trampled on. Illuminate the shadows till every statue comes tumbling down, down, down.
Oh God, I help in the time of trouble.
Oh God, I help in time of trouble.
Oh God, I help in the time of trouble.
Oh God, I help in time of trouble.
Oh God, I help in the time of trouble.
Oh God, I help in the time of trouble.
You bring hope to the hopeless. You bring hope to the hopeless. You bring hope to the hopeless. A prayer for reconciliation. Where there is separation, there is pain. And where there is pain, there is a story. Where there is story, there is understanding and misunderstanding, listening and not listening. May we, separated peoples, estranged strangers, unfriended families, divided communities, turn toward each other and turn toward our stories with understanding and listening, with argument and acceptance, with challenge, change, and consolation. Because if God is to be found, God will be found in the space in between. Amen. You can have a seat.
So I've been a parent now for 9 years, and you learn a lot when you're a parent. Some things are really exciting and like energizing, and there are some things that are completely terrorizing, and sometimes those are the exact same thing. And one of those things which I have found so cool and amazing and energizing and so terrifying at the exact same time is seeing so much of yourself in another human being, right? 10 years ago, before I became a parent, we bought a new car. We bought a Mazda CX-7, which is a crossover. The Mazda CX-7 has the exact same turbocharged engine as their sports car. So it was really fun to drive. So when we talk about feelings, when I would drive, I had lots of feelings of excitement and exhilaration. These days, 10 years later, that Mazda CX-7's long gone. We now have a minivan and a Toyota Prius. Those feelings of exhilaration while driving are long gone. Now, the majority of the feelings that I have when I'm driving are around anger or feelings of road rage, right? So this past week, we were up in the Duluth area and drove up the North Shore, and this time of year, it's really busy, right? If you've ever been up there, you know there's lots of people from all over Minnesota and all over the region that love to go up there. So it's quite busy. There's lots of drivers, and many of those drivers aren't the best drivers, or they're not paying the most attention. And so some of those feelings within me that were not exhilaration feelings were bubbling up. And there were a couple different times, I'd say once, but it was more than once, when I didn't say something, but from the back seat, one of our 5-year-olds says, "Oh, you gotta be kidding me." Like that exact phrasing and like cadence and everything. "Oh, you gotta be kidding me." Oh, that's super cute. And that sounds a little bit too much like me. I have a lot of feelings of anger when it comes to driving, unfortunately, and it trickles down to our children as well. So as Katie mentioned, this month we've really been focusing in on this series that we've called All the Feels. Coming to the end of the summer, and what has been, even though it's just the end of the summer, what's been a interesting year to say the least. And at this time when we are in the midst of these really difficult 2 years, we said, what if we spend a month focusing on many of the feelings that we have had or we've witnessed other people having, rather than sweeping them under the rug or tamping them down and pretending they don't exist? What if we acknowledge them in order that we might do something with them, and in order that God might be able to speak into them so that we can do something with these feelings? So we started off the series with exhaustion, and then we got to, why am I forgetting these? I was on vacation. Exhaustion. Yeah, recovering from exhaustion. So we had sadness was last week, and then 2 weeks ago was neglect. So these are the feelings we've dealt with so far, and today, as we've already said, we are talking about the feeling of anger, or the feeling of rage. And each week that I've been preaching through this, I've tried to give you like an image to imagine what that feeling looks like. So the image that I want you to think of when it comes to rage or anger today is that experiment with the Diet Coke and Mentos. Everybody familiar with this? I actually thought about doing it up here, just in case nobody had seen it before, or just for the fun of it, and I decided it would make a complete mess. But if you're not familiar with it, the Diet Coke and Mentos experiment is you take a 2 liter of Diet Coke, or any carbonated beverage, actually, we'll get to that in a second, and you drop in a whole sleeve of Mentos, and when you do that, it creates like a geyser, just like shoots up into the air. So like imagine that when you think of anger, this bubbling over to the point where it just like explodes almost. Now, something I learned this week is that is not actually a chemical reaction. Anybody know that? It's a physical reaction. Yeah, Trevor's shaking his head. So what it is, the carbonation, it's not about like an interaction of the chemicals between the two things. It's about an interaction of the CO2 in the carbonated drink. It's not just Diet Coke, it's any carbonated drink, with the flat and porous surfaces of the Mentos. So when they drop in, because the Mentos are flat, they have a large surface area, and then they have lots of pores in them, the carbonation sticks to those rather than the sides of the bottle, and that's what makes the liquid expand and then shoot out. It's completely explainable, as if it comes from nowhere, though. And our feelings of anger can be a little bit like that too. They can just be like small drops, these small things that introduced in the right situation, introduced in the right amount, can become almost explosive. Perhaps you've had some of those feelings over the last 2 years. If you haven't had those feelings, I'm sure that you have witnessed other people have those feelings. Now, there's like the normal anger of everyday things. There's like the road rage that even the 5-year-olds pick up on. And then there's all of this other stuff that has happened over the last 2 years. So we've had this thing called COVID. Thank you. We had this pandemic that starts in March 2020, and we have a significant number of people who are not just angry or not just upset, but they feel angry about things shutting down and things no longer being like they were before, and losing things, losing access to things that they felt like they deserved. On the other end, we also had people who are angry that there wasn't enough being done about this pandemic. We could see it coming. Why didn't we do more to keep people healthy, to keep the spread down? Then we get further into the pandemic a little bit, and we start to come out of isolation a little bit more, but there's still restrictions around what to do to keep people safe. And we have people who feel really angry about having all of these restrictions around the things that they are supposed to do. And then we have people who are angry at the people who are angry because they're not taking the simple steps in order to keep people safe. Then we get into the summer of 2020, and we have the murder of George Floyd and all of the protests that come out of that. As far as we can tell, it's probably the biggest protest movement in history, period, spreads across the globe because people are angry about the systemic injustice and going out into the streets in order to call out that injustice. There's also people who feel angry about the people being angry about the systemic injustice and all of the protests and what they mean. We get further into the year and we have a presidential election. It's the highest turnout in the history of our presidential elections. Many people went out because they were angry about the situation in the country and the current administration, and they voted to do something about that. And then there were people who were angry about how that turned out and acted out violently and angrily on January 6th in order to try to overturn that. And since then, we have people over here who have been angry at the people who are angry and angry at the people who are not doing enough about the people who are angry and not doing enough to protect our democracy. Is anybody exhausted yet? And angry yet? Right? So like that, and that's just, all of that is 2020 or the 6 days after 2020. Since then, we have what? Gas prices. And we have inflation, and we have climate change, and we have cancel culture, and we have the end of Roe versus Wade. We have all of this anger on top of the normal stuff, and the feeling can just feel overwhelming, right? Explosive even, like a geyser of Mentos going into a 2-liter of Diet Coke. Now, I want to acknowledge two things that I want to be the major takeaways, but also acknowledge them up before we go further as we talk about this feeling of anger. And number one is that anger in and of itself is not necessarily bad. It's not necessarily inherently sinful. Often anger is actually a legitimate and appropriate response. The interaction of the Mentos in the Diet Coke, we could say, oh, that's not right. Well, it's an actual physical reaction, like it's natural. Sometimes often anger is a legitimate and appropriate response to something in the world not being right. So let's acknowledge that up front, number one. But then number two, we can't end there. We can't just settle into our anger. We can't just settle into that spot. Instead, we need to be motivated to do something with that anger going forward. So how do we deal with the anger that we have, and how do we move on from that? And that's really where we're going to key in today. Unfortunately, the Bible has a lot to say about anger, and actually, there's a lot of anger that comes out in the Bible. One of the things that we say about the Bible is that here at the Grove is that it's not a roadmap, it's not an instruction manual, it's not an answer book. The Bible is a compilation of stories that shows us what the life of faith looks like in all of its messiness. And that includes appropriate anger, legitimate anger, and sometimes inappropriate and illegitimate. People are angry in the Bible. If you've heard stories from the Bible, if you've read the Bible at all, you've probably heard stories or read stories about people being angry. You've probably read stories about God being angry that is actually the people's projection onto God, what they think God should be angry about. There's also these stories of God being angry about legitimate injustices in the world. So there's lots of anger in the Bible. What do we do with all of that anger? Well, for 2,000 years, Christians have said, you know what, when there's conflict about what to do, what to think about what God is like, we need to look to Jesus first. And Jesus becomes that filter. Jesus is the fullest and the most understandable image of what God looks like. So if we have questions about what God is like, we should say, well, what is Jesus like? So for that, we're going to turn to one of the biographies about the life of Jesus, the Gospel according to the Gospel according to Matthew, written by one of his earliest followers. And even in the biography about Jesus, in this one of 4 biographies that we have about the life of Jesus, we see Jesus getting angry. We have these stories of Jesus getting angry about people rejecting him or whole cities rejecting him. He's not really thrilled about that. We see Jesus getting angry at powerful people, religious people who are excluding or taking advantage of other people. We even get this one story where Jesus gets angry at a fig tree because he's hungry and it doesn't have fruit. And he wants that fruit, but there's no fruit on it, so he curses it. It's a little over the top, but I also get it because I've been hangry before. As Jesus is going around and doing these things, just like we're trying to do now, looking to Jesus and say, well, what is God like and what does that require of us? He had these followers who would follow him around, listen to what he said, looked at what he did, and then tried to figure out what they were supposed to do. And they're watching all of this. And so as they get to the very end of their time, it is the Last Supper. It is the last few hours that they're ever going to have with their friend and teacher. They're really keying in on what he thinks and what they ought to do. And so this is the story from Matthew 26, and this is verses 31 to 35, and then jumping forward a bit to verses 47 through 54. Again, this is Jesus gathered around with some of his closest followers. This is his last supper with them. Jesus said to them, "This night you will all fall away because of me. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised, I will go ahead of you into Galilee." Peter said to him, "If they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away." Jesus said to him, "I tell you the truth. On this night, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." Peter said to him, "Even if I must die with you, I will never deny you." And all the disciples said the same thing. So then jumping forward a few hours to the Garden of Gethsemane, while he was still speaking, this is Jesus speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived with him. With him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent by the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign saying, "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." Immediately he went to Jesus and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you are here to do." Then they came and took hold of Jesus and arrested him. But one of those with Jesus grabbed his sword, drew it out, and struck the high priest's slave, cutting off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back in its place, for all who take hold of the sword will die by the sword. Or do you think that I cannot call on my Father, and that he would send me more than 12 legions of angels right now? How then would the scriptures that say it must happen this way be fulfilled?" Okay, so to recap, Jesus is gathered with his closest followers. This is his last several hours with them, and he's telling them how it's all going to go down over the next few hours. And he says, all of you are going to desert me. And one of them, named Peter, says, "No, I won't. They might, but I won't. Oh, no, I won't." And Jesus says, "Oh, yeah, you will. In fact, you're going to do it 3 times. So then they get to the garden. They get to this point where the mob is coming to arrest Jesus. And Peter's there. Peter can see what's happening. And what he does, what we see happening over the next few verses, is him responding in a legitimate and maybe even appropriate way. He's angry. He's angry because this man that he has spent these last several years following, that he knows has done nothing wrong, is about to be arrested and probably killed, and it's being led by one of their mutual friends. How dare he? Of course he's going to be mad. And now's the chance for Peter to step in and say, "See, Jesus, I won't desert you. In fact," pulls out the sword and starts swinging away. And yet Jesus says, "No, this is not how it's going to happen." Peter's got to be super confused. He's got to be super confused. This is of course he's angry. Shouldn't Jesus be angry? Of course he wants to defend his friend, right? What on earth is going on here? What gives? Well, what gives is that Jesus is showing that we can't just end in that spot of anger. And in fact, Jesus flat out says, you don't think I could defend myself here? You don't think we could figure out a way around this? In fact, defending myself, doing things that would prevent me from being killed, would not accomplish anything. Wouldn't accomplish anything. So instead, what Jesus is modeling to Peter and to his followers and to those of us 2,000 years later is that there can be a movement from anger, legitimate, even appropriate anger, to a feeling of peace. Now, when I say peace, you might be thinking like the peace that like stands back and just allows bad things to happen and just being okay with it. The image might be like trying to stick the top back on the Diet Coke and just pretending that nothing is going to happen underneath that top. That's not what we're talking about here, and I don't think that's what Jesus would want to convey through this either. The feeling or the concept that I want us to key in on is not just that type of peace that stands back and allows things to happen, but the Jewish idea of shalom. Any of you heard of shalom before? Shalom is this Hebrew concept of not just peace, like the absence of war or tension or violence, but shalom is a wholeness, a completeness. Some of the imagery is actually around like maturity, the spot where everything becomes right as it was always intended to be right. So shalom is not just sitting back and allowing things to happen and being okay with it. Shalom is patience and resilience and the motivation for the world as it is to be made closer to the world as it should be. One example of how this might play out is one of our Grove groups right now is studying the Racial Healing Handbook. And this past month, we went through a chapter called Naming and Grieving Racism. And it actually like tries to walk you through that 5-step process of grieving. And we try to pinpoint like where are you on this scale of grieving racism. And those five steps in the grieving process are, see if I can remember them, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Got them. So those of us who are in the group we are all white, we're all middle-class white people, and so we've been going through this study together over the last several months, and all of us said that we often find our place somewhere between anger about the racial situation in our country, the systemic injustice in our country, and depression, and then often cycling back to anger. So like we get really angry about things, and then we get depressed that we can't do anything about it, and then we just go back to being angry. That's not like the most healthy cycle, right? However, one of the things that we also were able to acknowledge is that we know people of color who were pretty sure if they were to put themselves on that scale, they would actually put themselves in a spot of acceptance. Now, does that mean that they're okay with the systemic injustice in the world? No, absolutely not. But they recognize the world as it is because they live it, right? And they're able to be patient and resilient and motivated to say, you know what, the world is not as it should be, and simply being angry is not going to get it any closer to the world as it needs to be. It's that shift of shalom, or from anger to shalom, right? The shift from you live by the sword, you die by the sword, as opposed to you live by shalom and you beat that sword into gardening tools. That's very biblical as well. So my hope for us as individuals who are trying to live into this, who are trying to wrestle with legitimate, appropriate anger even in our individual lives and in our world, can also acknowledge we can't stay there. We need to have that resilience. We need to have that patience. We need to have that motivation to see the world that is not ours to save. We need to see that world as not as it is, slowly towards the world as it should be. We need to not live by the sword and die by the sword, but live by shalom, that wholeness, that completeness, that maturity that eventually turns those swords into gardening tools that allows us to grow goodness in our lives and in our world. So let that be so.
A part of the way we grow goodness is by taking care of each other and contributing here, taking care of each other so that we can take good care of our community in Cottage Grove. So before we go today, let us consider it a part of our worship, our offering. If you have paper offerings, the baskets are going to come by. You can put those in there. Digital offering, of course, online. And if nothing else, we are just so glad that you are here and contributing your presence. So if you have your sheets that you filled out, you can stick those in there as a part of your offering as well. And would somebody mind opening the door and inviting the kids back in? They don't have to come, but they can. Oh, Jeremy says no. Just kidding. Sorry. Leave them out there. A few more moments of peace for us in here. Let's sing together. Would you all stand and rise one more time? We'll close out with a song. Sorry about that. There's a world at war, caught in suffering, silent casualties. Oh God, grant us peace. In these sleepless nights, I can hardly breathe. Despite brutality, I know that we'll be free. I know that we'll be free. Let the light in, keep it shining. Let it break into the darkness. All that love dares us to see, we'll all be free. In these desperate times, love will hold us here. Love will join our hands, teach us to have no fear. So we lay our head down to wash their feet. When we see our brother, oh, we'll all be free. Yes, we'll all be free. Let the light in, keep it shining. Let it break into the darkness. All the love dares us to see, we'll all be free. Let the light in, keep it shining. Let it break into the darkness. All that love dares us to see, we'll all be free. We'll all be free. We'll be free. Free. We'll all be free. We'll be free. Free. We'll all be free. We are free. Free. We'll all be free. We are free. We'll all be free. Yeah. Let the light in, keep it shining. Let it break into the darkness. All the love dares us to see, we'll all be free. Let your light, let the light in, keep it shining. Let it break into the darkness. All the love dares us to see, we'll all be free. We'll all be free. We'll all be free. Amen.
Once again, it was so good to be with you this morning. If you are looking for a new church, hey, we got one right here. we would love for you to be a part of this community that we are continuing to grow. It's a great opportunity to build meaningful relationships and do some really fantastic things in and for this community. Before we go, I want to give one reminder and one announcement. The one reminder is it's not raining right now. Go explore the Grove, okay? Go explore all of that new landscaping that Katie's parents led us through over the last several days. Let's give them one more hand. Coming all the way over here to do this. And secondly, next Sunday, we are ending our current series, All the Feels, with the feeling of calm from anxiety. Okay? I don't know what I'm going to say yet, but hopefully it's something helpful for me too. So from anxiety to calm, hopefully not from calm to anxiety. I hope I don't do that for you. But then also next week during our service, we're going to have what we call a backpack blessing. Kids will be going to school 2 days later, at least in South Washington County. So if you're able to be here, or you know people who have kids who are about to start school, they'll be welcomed up here with their backpacks. We'll say a blessing over them and then send them with a tag that they can put on their backpack as they head to school just a couple days later. So that's happening next Sunday. All right. With that, we've got coffee and donuts out there. You're already standing, so I'll have you extend your hands to receive the blessing. May we be those who live into that shalom, live into that wholeness, that healing, that maturity that takes those swords, pounds them into plowshares, and grow goodness in our lives and in our world. May that be so.